Hello AP World History students, Mrs. Mathers here. The purpose of this video is to familiarize you with developments in Southwest Asia. In part one, I'll be talking about Mesopotamia in particular. Just to review where we've come from, we talked about the Paleolithic era and the Neolithic Revolution. The Neolithic Revolution is going to lead to complex civilizations. So first of all, we have the domestication of plants and animals. This is going to come out and result in better tools and techniques for growing crops, for herding animals. As a result of food storage techniques, we have a food surplus and we can feed more people. This will lead to a population increase, which now not everyone needs to be engaged in hunting or gathering. And so we can specialize in things like pottery, metallurgy, and textiles. We also have a need for order because we have more conflict, and we have a need for defense from outsiders because of war. So all of this is going to lead us to complex civilizations. Now, I'd like to just give you a definition of civilizations. This one comes from the National Geographic. A civilization is a complex human society, usually made up of different cities with certain characteristics of culture and technological development. Now, civilizations formed in many parts of the world simultaneously. We're going to be focusing today on Mesopotamia, but I'd like to just highlight for you this map here. The Fertile Crescent is an area that encompasses the region you see highlighted in green. So we have Egypt in the Nile River Valley, and we have Mesopotamia in the Tigris and Euphrates Rivers valleys. Southwest Asia is considered the cradle of civilization. Specifically, we'll be highlighting again Mesopotamia today in part one and the Persian Empire in part two. So Mesopotamia is highlighted here in sort of yellow-green color. The word Mesopotamia means the land between the rivers. It is located in modern-day Iraq, and there has been a lot of archaeological evidence uncovered in the area known as Mesopotamia. One of the characteristics of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers were that they had unpredictable flooding. So imagine that Nineveh has flooded. You can see it on the map up here. And Nineveh's crops are destroyed. The people are hungry. So what are they going to do? Well, maybe they're going to go down the Tigris River and attack the people of Assur in order to get their crops and get their food. So what really was a result of the unpredictable flooding of the Tigris and the Euphrates River was a need for order and a need for structure. And this led to the formation of small city-states around 3200 BCE in Mesopotamia. There would be conflict and war, and this is why we see the development of a complex civilization in order to manage the affairs of the city-states that existed in Mesopotamia. Now, Gilgamesh was a Mesopotamian king of a city called Uruk. He ruled somewhere between 2900 and 2700 BCE. Some tablets that highlighted the life of Gilgamesh were found in the area of Mesopotamia near where Uruk was, and if you want to look at that, you can go back and look on the map and see where that was. One of the most important findings about Gilgamesh was the Epic of Gilgamesh. Now, I've read the entire epic, and it is quite epic. Gilgamesh in this tale goes on an incredible journey, and what he's really searching for is eternal life. He wants to know how he can live forever after witnessing the death of a friend. Now we will see this theme throughout our study of civilizations and throughout our study of history. People were concerned with what happens after this physical body dies. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, we find evidence of a flood. Now, there are many flood stories in history that have been found in archaeological evidence. We also see a description, or a few descriptions actually, of the afterlife. Now, in the case of Gilgamesh, it was really quite an unpleasant description of the afterlife. He was not happy with what he found at first, but You'll have to read the epic if you want to know what he really found out in the end. Sort of the ironic thing about the Epic of Gilgamesh is while he was searching for eternal life, in essence, he sort of has found it, because here we are almost 5,000 years later reading the Epic of Gilgamesh. The Babylonian Empire was one of the most important empires in Mesopotamia. It dominated Mesopotamia during two eras. The old era was from the 19th to 15th century BCE, and then once again from the 7th to 6th century BCE. There were several other empires that ruled that area of Mesopotamia or dominated between those the 15th and the 7th century, but they're not really applicable to this course. The Babylonian Empire had a centralized government, and you can see the city of Babylon where the star is. They had a system of taxation, and they had a bureaucratic rule instead of military. So this means that they had people that were experts in their particular area of work, whether it was building construction, irrigation construction, whether it was taxation. But they did also have kings. One of the important kings of Babylon, of the old Babylon, was Hammurabi. It's believed that Hammurabi ruled from approximately 1792 to 1750. Hammurabi's code is believed to be the first written code, or at least it's the first one that we have evidence of. In Hammurabi's code, there are multiple topics, and if you had time to read through all of the evidence that's been found, it's actually written on stone. Have you heard of that term, written in stone? Well, that's what Hammurabi's code was written in. It addresses things like taxes, behavior, civil law, how a wine shop should be run. Evidence of social status is very, very prevalent in Hammurabi's code, and a lot of it is an eye for an eye mentality. So, for example, if you take out someone's eye by accident, even or on purpose, then your eye should be taken out as well. There's also a lot of evidence of patriarchy in the Code of Hammurabi. I have a few examples here that show that there is these things that I've talked about. So we see in this first one a runaway male or female slave. Okay, so there are slaves. That indicates a social hierarchy. And if they bring the slaves back, they'll get rewarded. 2 shekels of silver. Robbery, the consequence there is pretty bad. Put to death. If a tavern keeper, in other words, a female, does not accept corn in payment for a drink, but takes money, and the price of the drink is less than that of the corn, she shall be convicted and thrown into the water. If a man knock out the teeth of his equal, his teeth shall be knocked out. However, what I don't have written here is that if a man shall knock out the teeth of a slave, he shall pay the slave owner a fee. If a man strike a freeborn woman so that she lose her unborn child, he shall pay 10 shekels for her loss. So, again, these are just a few examples of Hammurabi's code, but they really make the concept of a social hierarchy quite evident. Ziggurats were these massive structures, stepped pyramid structures, that were built probably in the 21st century BCE or even before then in what is now Iraq. In the bottom picture on the right, you can see a photograph from the 1920s of the Ziggurat of Ur before it was excavated. These are just Bedouins who were farming, or not farming, rather grazing, or bringing their, and actually it looks like they have guns, I'm not quite sure, but when archaeologists started going into the area of Mesopotamia, they started finding these huge ziggurats. And as they uncovered them, they found evidence really of massive structures. These massive structures were believed to be the home of the gods, and as more evidence has been uncovered, we see that they actually demonstrate a very sophisticated hierarchy, because in order to build something like a ziggurat, you need to have architects, you need to have builders, you need to have people who are able to excavate or quarry the stones that are being used. You need to have someone who can organize and facilitate all of the construction. And then, as evidenced in writings left behind by the Babylonians, we know that they believed that there were gods that inhabited the top step of the pyramid. So we have evidence of a structure of religion as well. And then finally, we have cuneiform. Cuneiform is the earliest writing system that has thus far been discovered. Again, it's possible that there are writing systems that could have been in an area that is not dry, that is very moist, and it has been erased by the environment. But what we do have are these clay tablets, and what was used for the writing on the clay tablets were uh, like reeds that were very hard, and they would use soft clay and put these symbols into the clay tablets. Now, cuneiform was really important. Having a writing system was going to lead to literacy and education among scribes and government officials. It would facilitate trade because you could keep records on the cuneiform tablet. And literature, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, was written on cuneiform. So as you can see, all of these developments indicate the growth of a complex civilization in Mesopotamia. Thank you for your time. In part 2, I will be talking about Persia.